Hello!
Hi, everyone.
Happy National Sewing Month.
I know, it's so exciting. You may be wondering why we're here.
We decided that it would be a fun way to celebrate Sewing Month with some weekly lives for the month. So every today's Wednesday. Every Wednesday this month, we're going to just come on here for 15-20 minutes and just answer questions that you guys might have. And we're going to have a different topic every week. So we're going to start. Oh, there's no sound. Testing. Can you hear? Is the sound good? Let us know in the comments if you're able to hear us or if the sound is still not coming through. Yes. Okay. Sounds good.
Maybe, yeah, you can turn up the volume a little bit. Yeah, see if that helped. So just going back to where we left off.
Yeah.
So we're coining this weekly chit chat thread happy hour. So we're popping on the live, like Calista said, every Wednesday this month to answer your questions.
Honestly, just kind of hang out and answer questions.
Yeah. We're just here to kind of answer a lot of like frequently asked questions. Every week will be actually kind of on a different topic. So it's not just going to be like completely unguided. So don't worry. Today specifically, we thought it'd be perfect since it's our first thread happy hour to talk about quilting.
Okay, so we're gonna get started with answering some questions that we had already received or we get really frequently and kind of have them archived. But feel free at any time to also include some questions below, or even if you're watching this stream after we've already posted it, you can ask some questions below and we'll either answer it in the next one or we'll make sure we respond with a comment below.
Exactly.
Okay, Stephanie, can you share the first question?
Yes. Dense quilting can sometimes make my quilt feel stiff. How can I keep my quilt looking soft?
Feeling soft.
And letting the texture show without the thread taking over.
Okay, this is if you're doing a lot of stitching on your quilt top, and sometimes when you have a lot of stitches per inch in an area, it can make the quilt almost doesn't have that soft cuddliness anymore. It just
it's a little less
cardboardy.
Flexible. Yeah. It leans a little cardboardy. So what would we recommend in this situation? I think first and foremost, you guys might already have a feeling, but it has a lot to do with the weight of the thread that you're using in your quilt.
Yep.
So I think it starts off actually from piecing your quilt with a lightweight thread. Like our favorites are DecoBob and Efina.
Yep.
The 60 weight cotton and the 80 weight polyester.
And then when it comes to quilting, I think everyone's standard is about a 40 or a 50 weight thread. But if you're going to be doing a lot of dense quilting, then it is better to use a lighter weight thread. So you can do more precision quilting, you can get a lot more detail when you're doing really dense stuff as well, and you can make it a lot tinier, but it also keeps the quilt soft at the same time. So you're using lightweight thread not only on the top but also in the bobbin, because the bobbin thread can also add a lot of thread into your quilts as well. So you shouldn't forget about putting a lighter weight thread into your bobbin. And so we definitely recommend an 80 to 100 weight thread if you're going to be doing that kind of micro quilting type of quilting, and it helps keep it a lot lighter and a lot softer.
Yeah, and I one more added benefit, since the question is focused on dense quilting, is if you're doing something that's more small, including pebbles, or even if you're just doing matchstick type of lines, any design that you're doing that's quilting, having that lighter weight thread will also help you maintain the detail of your quilting. So if you're doing something that's I don't know, feathers, for example, but you want to make them really small and you still want that texture to come through, having that lighter weight thread will make sure it's not just holding down all your fabric. It's still giving you some nice texture.
And the thread that we're talking about, the 80 weight, is called DecoBob. That's what we recommend for the bobbin thread all the time, but you can also use it in the top as well. And for the 100 weight that you can use in the top, it's called WonderFil. So we love our lightweight threads. We talk about them all the time. They're just so versatile. So we're just talking in this case about dense quilting and keeping your quilts light, but in the context of like what the thread can be used for, it's a lot of things. It's kind of going back to like when you have lighter weight threads, you're going to see them less, you're going to feel them less, you're going to be able to like blend and hide stitches a lot more as well.
Yeah, and then one more quick thing I'll mention about using WonderFil too is when you're doing the dense quilting and you don't want the thread to show, that's why WonderFil matters so much, because when you have that dense quilting, sometimes it can actually cover some motifs like you're piecing in the background if your thread is too thick, right? It's just going to end up covering what you're wanting to show. So having that lightweight thread will also allow your colors and your piecing to come through.
And the WonderFil does come, we have a question, do you sell it in like bigger spools? The WonderFil does come in our standard mini cone. This is not WonderFil, but it'll come in a size like this, and there's about 2,750-ish yards on this type of spool. And then we do sell them, again, this is not WonderFil, but on this size as well. And those are going to be 10,000 yard cones. So you're going to have thread for days.
Yeah,
or
you're
years.
going to have WonderFil forever.
Years and decades
of WonderFil, yeah.
Yeah. So we do sell them in various sizes. And okay, here's another question. This is kind of general. What thread do you recommend for quilting? So we get this question almost at every show that we go to, or like every event. People love asking what's the best thread for quilting? And we always say it's pretty much anything that can go through the eye of your needle. So on the machine, that's going to be anything from 100 weight all the way to a number 12 or 12 weight thread. But then by hand, you can even go heavier and do hand quilting with heavier weight threads as well.
Yeah, I think this is a really great question. I actually have it coming up soon. So we'll definitely talk on what the difference between 100% cotton or using polyester in your quilting will be like. But just to kind of finish the thought about what type of thread is best for quilting, I think the good sign in that question is actually a lot of quilters are really open-minded to using different threads, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be exploring the options. And ultimately, I know this is not everyone's favorite answer, but like there is a high degree of personal preference and your taste that comes into play when you are choosing thread for a quilt, because you're not going to use always the same thread for every quilt.
I think in short, it is personal preference. You can use anything that you really like. If you want your thread to show up more, if you're like the type that likes quilting that's a bit more bold or a bit more shiny, you definitely want to choose threads with higher sheen or a lower number for the weight. So that's going to be like 40 weight, 30 weight, 12 weight, things like that are going to pop a little bit more. And if you're someone that likes your quilting to be a little bit more subtle or hide a little bit more, that's when you want to use your lighter weight thread. So that's going to be anything smaller than a 50 weight. So like 60 weight, 80 weight, 100 weight. Those ones are the ones that you want to go for if that's the type of look. So I think it really matters. Like you ask yourself when you go to quilt that project, how you want it to look like, and just having that rough gauge of like, okay, I want the threads to pop more. I want the threads to hide a little bit more. And they'll help you really decide as well.
Yeah. And you can absolutely even mix and match the weights that are in your quilt, right? Make different areas pop and different areas recede. And just super quick, before we keep diving into it, about thread weight, the lower the number, the thicker the thread. The higher the number of the weight, the thinner the thread. So when we're talking about WonderFil 100 weight, that's basically the finest thread you can get on the market. It's the same weight as silk. So that's why it's really great for quilting and not seeing it. And another note too is it's excellent for stitch in the ditch. Excellent. Yeah.
So going back to the question about does it matter if it's not 100% cotton? And this was a question that we actually had coming up is what's a good all-around quilting thread if I just want something to be strong, reliable, and easy to work with? And it can be cotton. It doesn't have to be cotton either. A lot of our quilting threads are also not 100% cotton or anything like that. There's like pros and cons to each one, but there's also like personal preference. At the end of the day, it's always you have the freedom to have the artistic freedom to choose the different types of threads to play with as well.
And actually, even funny enough, it's not just cotton or poly. There's a lot of in between too, right? Like cotton wrapped poly and things like that. So what we can guide you on is some differences about cotton versus polyester and why certain people have preferences to one or the other. So for example, cotton is likely going to be the same material as the fabric that you're quilting on, right? Quilting cotton. So some people just like to match the materials and they both end up having that nice matte finish as well. So I think that this is also a strong preference that people have because that's what many people learn to quilt with is quilting with cotton as well. So there is that kind of like preference there, but then also on top of it, cotton's just a very like stable like material to work with. You don't have to worry about it under heat and stuff like that. But there are certain, I would say, like not the best things about cotton that some people don't love. So no matter what you do with cotton, you're always going to have a little bit of lint. So for WonderFil, we double gas all our cottons. So they're extremely low lint, but there's just no way to remove 100% of the lint on cotton. But we get really close without applying any other like adhesives or wax to it, right? But if you're someone that does a lot of like long arming or just doing a lot of quilts, you don't want to have to deal with that lint issue. That's when things like polyester threads are really nice to use. And I will mention as well, polyester is like an umbrella.
Yeah.
So you're going to have different type of polys, and actually some polyesters do have lint.
Yes, and they actually look more like a cotton thread.
And they do look
like a spun polyester, kind of like some of like your serger thread or something like that. That's like a spun poly typically.
Yes. So when you are using like a polyester, finding one that's like lintless, like it's not a spun polyester, it's a filament polyester, that is what's going to give you those really nice crisp lines. And of course, poly is always going to be a tiny bit more shiny compared to cotton. And also I would say for quilts that are like high use and require a lot of durability, polyester also does provide that little bit extra strength if you're comparing it hand in hand with cotton. So those are kind of reasons why people would choose one or the other.
Yeah.
And then I saw the quick question of what the name of our cotton thread is. So for example, our most popular quilting cotton is called Konfetti. That is our 50 weight cotton, and it's available in 120 colors. So there's lots and lots of colors of confetti for you to use when you're quilting. But of course, I have to give a special shout out to our 12 weight cotton called Spagetti. So Konfetti and Spagetti are like my favorite cotton threads to quilt
and Efina.
with. Yes. And then Efina. So this is kind of the scale of how things go. Efina, 60 weight. It's going to be finer. Excellent for piecing or very fine quilting. Then you have your 50 weight cotton, which is Konfetti. That's going to be a good all-around thread for quilting. It'll blend in to the colors that you're matching to, but if you're choosing some contrasting colors on your quilt, you can also make 50 weight stand out. But then of course, if you're aiming for that really nice bold stitching, 12 weight Spagetti. So this is the heaviest that will go through the eye of the needle on your sewing machine. This is a 12 weight cotton thread, and you can absolutely quilt with it. All you have to do when you're using heavier weight threads is just increase your stitch length a little bit. Make sure you're using that lightweight bobbin, and also making sure you have the correct needle size.
Yeah. And for anyone that's just joining in now, we're just doing like a general Q&A right now. So if you guys have questions, feel free to just keep popping them in the chat. We have a list of questions that we received ahead of time, so we'll keep running through that. But if there's things coming up, just ask along and we'll make sure we try to get to everyone's questions. So while we're on the topic of cotton, we actually did get a question as well earlier, which was, my machine seems to get full of lint when I quilt large projects. Is there a thread that helps keep it cleaner? So lint is probably because this person's either using a cotton thread, or they're using a spun polyester type of thread, which I wouldn't really recommend too much if you're going to be quilting. So let's just assume this person is using a lintier cotton. So there's not really a whole lot when you actually go to quilt your quilt if you've already picked that thread. When you're choosing what thread to buy, we have to kind of go back to like when you're buying a cotton thread and like things to look out for. So you typically want to choose a thread that's been gassed, like our cotton thread, where we actually try to remove as much lint as we can, or looking for long staple Egyptian cotton threads. Those will, or not specifically Egyptian cotton, but long staple cotton threads. Those will typically have a little bit less lint on those as well, because the longer staples already help reduce the amount of lint that is kind of on the body of the thread. And
I would say too that like if lint is really the issue and you're quilting a large quilt, like what this person asked in their question, specifically that it's a large quilt, these are things where you can start considering like, oh, should I use polyester instead, where you're not going to get any lint?
A cottonized polyester.
Yeah, a cottonized polyester. So even for like our DecoBob, WonderFil, that's not going to... Master Quilter, none of those will give you any lint whatsoever. Our trilobal polyester will also not give you any lint. None of them are spun polyester. So if you're like, I just want 0 lint in my machine, then you can look at those options, because like we mentioned earlier, there's a lot of ways to treat cotton thread, but there's always going to be a little bit of lint, and that's just part of the maintenance and price of using cotton threads, even though we try really hard to reduce the amount of lint on our threads, so you have to do the least amount of cleaning possible. And then of course, if you are using DecoBob in the bobbin, that's gonna heavily reduce also the lint that's happening all in your bobbin case as well.
Yes, that's right. I think you'll notice if you maybe haven't been using the highest quality cotton before, and then you use like a higher quality cotton or a cotton that's been gassed, you'll actually notice there's already like a big drop in the amount of lint. But like Stephanie was saying, if like you really just like don't want any lint in general, then you can choose threads that don't have any lint on them, if that's something that you really, if it really bothers you.
Yeah, and then I would definitely keep an extra eye out for what Clifton mentioned, those cottonized polyesters. All that means is it doesn't mean it's a cotton. It's still a polyester, but it's been treated to behave and look like a cotton. So it's not going to have a high sheen. And that's the difference between the cottonized polyester and the trilobal polyester.
Yeah.
A trilobal polyester will always be shiny. It's always going to have like a pretty high sheen on it. A cottonized polyester will not. So you can still emulate the look of cotton without having to deal with the lint issue. And then I'll mention really, like, I think that this might be helpful too for people that are doing a lot of long arm quilting, or if you even have it like as a business, for example. There is also a difference in price and thread usage, right? So if you're someone that does a lot of quilting, threads like Ultima, where it's a cotton wrapped poly, it still performs beautifully, looks great, holds up really nicely in a quilt. But there are like different price points as well to thread. And I think that's just like being honest with you guys and just talking like really openly about what your options are, right? Because cotton's going to be a little bit more up there if you compare it to some others.
Okay, so another question we had was, when I do applique or English paper piecing, I want my stitches to disappear or not show. What's the best choice? So when we're talking about, I think they mean like probably like turned applique or probably raw edge applique, the type of applique where you don't want to see the stitching. Same with like English paper piecing. It kind of again always goes back to thread weight, right? The basis of understanding what when you choose certain threads. So if you don't want to see your thread, it's always about choosing a lighter weight thread, because the thinner the thread, the less of it you're going to see. So again, this answer is going to be the lightweight threads. You're going to want to use something that's like DecoBob or Invisifil. And the reason why we kind of say DecoBob or Invisifil is, I would say, like, sometimes people have preference. They like the hand feel of one more than the other. They're pretty similar. They're both going to give you a much more invisible result than if you're used to using like a 50 weight thread or a 40 weight thread previously. There's already going to be like a really big jump in the result that you get. So I think you're going to want to stick with the lighter weight threads anytime, not just in terms of like English paper piecing or like needle turn or raw edge applique. It's just anytime you don't want to see your thread too much, when you have that thought, use those lighter weight threads.
Yeah, and to build on top of that, I think this question fits in well with today's topic of quilting. Is why do my quilting stitches sometimes look unbalanced or bulky, and what's the easiest way to get a cleaner result? And I think this also covers like if you sometimes get skip stitches or a random like tension issue that arises. Our answer to this is DecoBob pre-wound bobbins, honestly. And the reason for that is because when you're getting our pre-wound bobbins, they're factory wound, right? So it's going to have perfectly even tension throughout the bobbin. I think many of you guys have experienced winding a bobbin on your own before. Sometimes it's like a little bulky in the middle, or it's a little slanted, or it's a little bit spongy. And so those differences can actually really impact your quilting.
Especially if you're doing multi-directional quilting, where you're kind of already like pulling the machine and the thread in different directions and adding like different inconsistencies versus like, you know, sewing in a straight line, for example.
Yeah, even if you have like thick spots in your quilt, right, where your corners line up, sometimes you get a skip stitch, right? So having really even tension matters in your bobbin. So now your bobbin, the way that your bobbin is wound and the way that your spool of thread is wound, which is also on a factory machine, they're going to be as perfect as possible so that they feed into each other a lot nicer.
Yeah, I think like you already, like what you were mentioning earlier, there's already inconsistencies with like the thickness of what you sew through sometimes. Like, you know, batting isn't perfectly even either. If you look at it in the light, there's like some pockets that have,
you can see
a
the
little
light
bit
through
more,
it, right?
or other parts that like are a little bit thinner. And like same with like the piecing, like there might be a lot more seams in one place versus another. And so like those already add inconsistencies when you're stitching through it. So trying to get other elements more consistent so you don't have as many like variables in play is helpful. And that's why we recommend pre-wound bobbins, not just for the convenience, but actually because it like does help deliver better tension and even stitches.
Yeah, and all our pre-wound bobbins are DecoBob. That's the 80 weight. And it's not just good for quilting, but even for like things like in machine embroidery where tension really matters.
Yeah.
So the pre-wounds are available in class 15. So that's for a lot of the Genomies, the Baby Locks, the Brother users out there. We have them in L's, the Pfaff, the Viking, Husqvarna, that crew of people. And then actually something that's like quite new for us is, I mean, this is really exciting, is the jumbo bee bobbins for Bernina users. So we have pre-wound bobbins for our Bernina users, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
And so like even when we're testing it and using it, and we've been testing it a lot in the last like 2 years. We have our 990 in the office right now, using it right now as well. So we have those 3 type of bobbins for the domestic machine, the B bobbin for Bernina, the L and the class 15. And then also for long arm quilting, if you're not quilting on your domestic, we also do have M bobbins. So
and L bobbins for some machines too.
Yeah, and then we also have
obviously for the domestic.
Yeah, and then we also have like a bulkier, more bobbins per case if your long arm machine takes L's.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few sizes, and I kind of generalized the bobbin size to the brand, but I would strongly recommend going onto our website. We do have a bobbin guide there where you can look up your exact machine model. And then just double check that it's the correct size, or you can go to the manufacturer or your manual for your sewing machine. That will also tell you your bobbin size. So DecoBob pre-wound bobbins are like one of the musts, I would say, like for me when I'm sewing, and especially if I'm switching around the thread weights at the top, that's going to be important.
Yeah. So switching topics, our next question is, what threads should I use for hand quilting? I think this question seems like it's specifically, there's more to it because it says they're interested in doing big stitch and they want to have a smooth thread for big stitch quilting. So when people say hand quilting, there's kind of 2 types of hand quilting. There's traditional hand quilting where you're kind of like rocking the needle a lot more and you're doing like smaller stitches, and then big stitch hand quilting, which is what this question is referring to. So if you're doing big stitch, the name kind of already implies you should be using a bigger thread or a thicker thread. And so that would be kind of something like our 12 weight threads or 8 weight threads, threads that are going to be lower in number. So I would say most typically our most popular lines of thread at thread weights, especially that we sell for big stitch quilting, are going to be the 12 weight threads and the number 8 threads. So you can definitely use either or. I would say it's just kind of a personal preference. If you wanted to be a little bit chunkier, I would use like the 8 weight. If you wanted to kind of still be very visible and look like big stitch quilting, but you don't want to go as like heavy as the 8 weight, then you can use something like the spaghetti or fruity. Now, if you want to add a little bit more fun to it, you can actually use some of the more exciting thread lines like glamour, like our 12 weight glamour, or the razzle and the dazzle in the 8 weights, and those have more sheen, sometimes a little bit of metallic and things like that as well. So then it adds a little bit more interest.
Yes, and I did see a question as well of whether or not we have thread charts. We have thread color charts for every single thread line on our website as well. So you can hop onto the website if you're wanting to look specifically for selecting threads for quilting. And I think everyone starts with the neutral threads. So if you have those down, I'd strongly encourage you to play around with some color and maybe some like variegated stuff too.
Yeah. And we got another question about what bobbin, for example, like a Q20 would take. So that would be like an M-size bobbin. But if you're not sure what bobbin your machine takes, all of the models that we can find, we have it in our bobbin guide. So you can always look there. And there's actually a measurement chart in there as well that you can print out and measure your bobbin against it. So if you don't see your bobbin listed, you can actually just use the thread or the bobbin measurement chart and figure out what size bobbin your bobbin is.
Yes. And I would say if you're printing that out, just make sure that your ratio is 100%. So that will print to the correct size where you can line everything up perfectly.
Yeah, there's a little scale on the bottom so you can measure to make sure that you printed it in the right size.
And where can they find all these resources?
So you can go to wonderfil.ca. Under the products tab, there is an option for resources, and on that resources page, that's where you can find all these thread charts. That's where you can find the bobbin guide and other helpful material as well. Or you can always like send us a message if you can't find any of it. We're happy to help anytime.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's kind of the the gist of how these little happy hour sessions are gonna go.
But don't leave yet, because there is something very special for those of you who joined and kind of hung out with us for the past 30 minutes. So we wanted to announce that for this month, because we're doing the thread happy hour, every week we're going to be doing specials on different thread lines, especially since I know
Depending on the topic.
Depending on the topic.
Yep.
Because I know some of you guys might be interested in trying some of these threads for yourself. So for the next week until September 9th at midnight, all of the thread lines at the quilting section of our website will be 10% off. But because you guys stayed around and hung out with us today, you're all going to get an extra 5% on top of that. So that's 15% off. And so we really rarely do this kind of thing, but we're thinking in honor of the National Sewing Month
and like trying to get more people to use different types of thread.
Yes. Yep. So grab a pen and paper. The code is, this is all in capitals, HHQT5, the number 5. So that's HHQT5. And you can use that on the checkout. But again, don't wait too long, because it's only going to be available for 1 week.
So next week we're going to be talking about embroidery as the topic. So if you guys have questions that you want us to answer for that, please leave them down below. So every week we're going to come on here live, with the exception of next week, because Stephanie will be at AQS Lancaster, and I will be at the Garden of Quilts. So we're going to be in different places next week, so we won't be able to do the live. But if you catch us at either of those events in person, feel free to say hi. But we're going to do a pre-recorded session for next week to answer any of those questions that come in. So if you're watching later or if you're watching now, just feel free to keep kind of like posting questions in the comments. We're going to answer them either in our next session or just within the comments. So we're just trying to spread more thread education this month and ask all the FAQs and try to just like keep talking about threads and sewing.
Yeah.
And hopefully you guys feel excited to try another thread line, or maybe you heard about like a tip that you haven't heard before today.
I know the time went by so quickly. I feel like I have like more, and I know you guys, as we talk about it, you probably have more questions that are coming up. So if there's anything that you missed, you still have questions about, we can still work it into our future sessions. So yeah, like what Calista said, just leave some comments down below if you have additional questions. We'll try to answer everything to the best of our ability.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And just to answer a quick question, will it work in the other countries? So yes, we'll make sure it works in all the other countries as well. So if you have any issues, you guys can message us.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah,
send us a DM or something like that.
All right. So thank you everyone for joining our happy hour today.
And we'll see you next week. Same time.
Bye.
Bye everyone.